Dan Marrett, you are the global director of marketing and strategy at Ciele Athletics, an awesome brand that I have been following now for many years. There's a lot to talk about here as a challenger brand, as an innovative brand, as a premium brand, expanding brand. So, Lutzi, where do you want to start?
Gosh, there's a million different ways we could go. And, one of the things that I think is really fun about this, our editor, Brett, it's like, I've got like 12 of their hats. I can't wait for this interview. And I feel like a lot of people are really locked into this brand. And I'd love to find out, you joined CLA about 5 or 6 years ago, right? What was it like when you first came in the door? Because I think, like Dylan was saying, you guys are expanding and doing all this incredible stuff. But when you first walked in the door, I remember you sent me some hats, which I'm still using to this day. But what was that kind of first year like for you, and what was your sort of approach and opinion to the role?
The first year ended up being quite chaotic. And the reason being, I started in September 2019, and we're a small team. I think everyone thinks that we're bigger than we are. At the
How
time
big are
that
you guys?
at the time that I joined in 2019, we were 8 people. We're now just shy of 30 people, including 4 people that work at our store in Montreal. So like an HQ team of 25, 26 people. When I started in September 2019, tiny organization. There's a lot of things. I mean, my career has kind of gone from bigger companies to smaller companies. Like you, Lutzi, 12 years at Red Bull, and then I worked at Rocky Mountain Bicycles for 3 years, which was obviously significantly smaller. And then I joined CLA, and we were 8 people. So there was a lot of just kind of figuring out what it's like to be in a company that small where there's so much on every single person's plate. There's so many things. What I think I really appreciate is the fact that we are constantly growing, evolving, and learning how to do things and elevating how we're doing things. It's a largely a white canvas. At Rocky Mountain, which was founded in 1981, there were so many things that the company had just been doing for years and years and years. And if you wanted to change something, it was a dramatic shift. You had to get a lot of people on board. You had to, realize the implications of stopping to do something to start doing something different. Whereas Ciele, it was, well, we haven't done that before. Let's start doing that. So there was, you really saw and felt the impact of every single thing that you did. But a few months after I started, um, started to get some radio silence from one of our actually at the time, essentially our only factory. And then news started hitting the world beginning of 2020 that there was this um, little medical situation going around. And then it was just a slow burn of watching it go from Asia to Europe to inevitably this is going to come to North America. And the first year ended up just being problem solving. Um, you know, in March when retailers shut down, brick and mortar was closed. In Canada, there was a notice that went out saying all non-essential businesses need to stop operations. And as much as we would love to think of ourselves as being absolutely essential, we're not an essential business. So there was, I want to say it was close to 24 hours that we actually turned orders off the website. We were no longer shipping to retailers because they were all closed, and even our e-com, we shut it off for 24 hours following the directions that were provided. And it's a scary moment to say, well, we might not have revenue anymore. We're going to have expenses, but we're not going to have revenue. So year one was just figuring out a lot of how to get through that. And I would, it's as we've continued to add people to the team, we've continued to, as you mentioned, like we've become more complex as a company as well. We've greatly expanded the collection, not just in headwear, but also launching into apparel, collaborations with larger brands. There's so many things going on. And it's just constantly like, okay, figuring out how we do that, how we work our way through that, and constantly pushing ourselves to elevate as a business and as a brand.
Awesome. All right. So Yeah, let's set a little foundation. So you joined the brand 5, 6 years ago. Share a little bit about when it was founded, how you got connected with it, and then also I think coming back to what Aaron said about Brett Jorgensen, the guy who edits his podcast, him having 12 of your products, starting in headwear, like the importance of the hero product. Like where did it start, and what was the wedge into the running community? What was the thing that originally caught fire?
Yeah, I'll try to cover all of that. Jumping way back, so the brand started in based in Montreal. Brand started in 2014, and the two co-founders is Mike and Jeremy. And Jeremy and I, longtime friends. I think we've known each other for 25 years now at this point. So when I used to work at Red Bull in Montreal and Quebec City, started in an on-premise, jumped onto the marketing side, became a field marketing manager, and then in 2012, I moved down to New York to work for the MLS team, the New York Red Bulls. And when I was down in New York, we were actually had I don't know, Lucy, you might remember this, Fit for Flight. So there's a fitness initiative at Red Bull that, there'd be one or two things a year and just trying to encourage everyone to be healthy and have an active lifestyle. And the fitness challenge that we had in 2014 was a step challenge. And so everyone was kind of put into groups of 5. You had to hit 10,000 steps a day. And every group that, as long as all 5 people did that, you stayed in the competition and there was some prize at the end. So our group ended up finding an incentive to work our way through that and have something to look forward to at the end. We all signed up for the Brooklyn Half Marathon and used running as a way to get through those 10,000 steps faster. And so I ended up falling in love with running, in particular at the actual Brooklyn Half Marathon. And at that same time, my friend Jeremy is starting this boutique headwear running brand. And so I was a fan of Ciele from day one. I lament to the day the fact that I didn't actually buy a cap in 2014 in the first production run, but I still have my first cap, a fast cap from 2015. I still have it lying around and still throw it on for runs from time to time. But I just started following along from the outside and watching the brand grow slowly but surely. And then ended up, like I said, I ended up leaving New York. But running had just became a very important part of my life. And when I moved to Vancouver and started working at Rocky Mountain Bicycles, not too long after that, Jeremy came out to BC and we had a conversation about the brand at some point being ready to bring someone on to help with sales and marketing. And it didn't make sense at that time, but in 2019, it made sense for me to join. The what helped, I mean, there's a genuine interest in people and community, and I think what helped, the two things that really helped propel the brand as it launched, one, Instagram was just a very good platform at that time and enabled brands to have a larger sort of a larger reach than they would have had prior to that. And see, a lot of the success in terms of getting visibility for the brand was due to Instagram in 2014, 15, 16. There are a lot of really key early adopters that picked up the product, gravitated towards it. Like you said, I think a lot of people who get at least one hat from us inevitably get more, and they're just quite loyal to the brand. So we were on literally we were on the right heads around the world, and it just really helped the brand get some more visibility. And then there were a few different run crews, clubs, groups that were connected to running that we ended up building good relationships with, and that just helped sort of accelerate the brand's growth. Again, Lucy, you can kind of relate to this with some Red Bull days, but when Ciele launched, for sure, it was a running brand that was focused and at the time solely creating headwear. And Run Specialty is generally excellent at selling footwear, and they're okay to good at selling a lot of other categories. But when you walk in saying we have this new brand Ciele, and here's the Go Cap available in 4 colors, Jeremy got laughed out of a lot of stores who are like, you started a running brand and you're just making hats? Like, what are you thinking? And so there was this need to sort of create not just legitimacy or like get people comfortable with the product, but also just the idea that like headwear matters. And if you look at and this is sort of leads to the genesis of the brand. If you look at marathon photos, even from 70s, 80s, etc., 60% of people are wearing hats, but most of them are wearing painters caps, promo caps, caps with cardboard brims, like hats that they shouldn't really be wearing if they're out there running for hours on end. But no one really cared about headwear. It was an overlooked category. You could get a white, black, red hat from Nike or Adi, but no one was really saying, I want to go out there and make a really great technical performance running hat. And Jeremy and Mike saw that as an opportunity, and it could have been it could have gone one of two ways. Unfortunately, the appetite for that was out there, and people were very excited about the idea that you could have a technical product that also has a very intentional design, and you're comfortable wearing to a concert, to work, to school, restaurant, meet with friends, etc. So, yeah, hopefully that covered a
Yeah,
bunch of what you asked.
comprehensive.
I think it's interesting in that this idea of the hat feels in some ways like, hey, we only focus on this thing and we do it really well and we really just want to smash this out of the park. And also, there's not a lot of real competition in this category, so we can kind of define the market, right? The other side of it being like, well, you know, lots of people can come up with hats and everybody wants to have some sort of hat. What makes this one special? What do you think was it really just who was buying it and who was posting about it on Instagram that kind of gave it that initial foothold into like, this is the cool thing to be wearing? And, was it more the brand or was it more the technical aspect of it?
It's a good question. I think it was a mix of both. I do think that having a lot of the people that were quick to pick up the brand were in the creative space, photographers, videographers, designers. Like I think it filled a need that maybe people didn't realize that they had. On the technical side, there's a lot packed into each and every single hat, and I think that the combination of the two, I think, is what helped get it really off the ground. And the fact that there was this um, lifestyle component to it, that it is something that yes, you can wear while you're running, but you also want to wear all day long. And there just wasn't anything like that, I guess, in the market from a technical standpoint, which made it stand out.
And running is lifestyle now.
Yeah, yeah, for
And so
sure.
many people who are passionate runners want to signal that fact, and Ciele has become a great tool to signal that even in lifestyle application, isn't it? I mean, I see people wearing Ciele hats all over the place all the time. Of course, I'm as core into the trail running community as it gets, and so maybe I'm, a fish in a fishbowl or whatever the metaphor is here. But anyway, you guys have done a really good job of getting that product out there, establishing the brand and the reputation, which then gives you the authority and the credibility to expand into other categories, which we can talk about here in a second as it relates to apparel. One of the things I'd love to have you kind of share with the audience too is just the dynamic of being in a growing brand. You said going from 8 people to 30 people in the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, it's indicative of the fact that there's a lot of momentum behind it. I'm sure there's pros and cons to that and growing pains that come along with that success. So maybe you could just share about a little bit about that journey, about growth and about, the strain it puts on a company and also obviously the tailwinds that you're experiencing as well.
Yeah, interesting question. I don't think that the growth is necessarily putting strains on us. I feel like we all wish that we were growing at a faster pace and actually we're adding more members to the team. I think the for sure it's also a learning curve, and as you go through things, you realize, did we properly structure for this? Do we have the right resources? Going from essentially making one product, from making headwear, launching into apparel, meant we were also working with way more factories, and the supply chain sourcing production management of that, the logistics of that. Adding when I started, we had 4 distribution partners. We now have 10 distribution partners, and again, the implications of all of that. I think we sometimes look back at how we did things a few years ago and realize like, wow, we were definitely missing this key person or this role that which, now that we have someone in that role on board is really making this actually possible. And you can kind of, there's a more realistic way for the company to work through a lot of those things. It feels when comparing the number 8 to the number 30, it feels like we've jumped quite a bit, but it has felt quite smooth in terms of how we have added to the team. And I think there's some value in slow growth like that in the sense that each person you have time to properly onboard them. You're going through a proper recruitment phase. I think if we're an independent brand, if someone came tomorrow and said, "Here's $50 million and we want you to 10x sales in the next 3 years," you're then scrambling to add people, and I think I feel like that would be more challenging to go through in terms of making sure that we're bringing good people on, that we're setting them up for success in their roles. The growth that we've had, it feels, I guess it feels manageable from that standpoint.
Before we dive all the way into, expanding the product lines and global domination and all that stuff, I'd be really curious to hear from you. You and I have shared some work experience at Red Bull, and credibility is, and relationship is a big part of all of that stuff. But when you come into a brand like this that is already credible and people are really passionate about it and posting on their own, photos of on Instagram and stuff, how as a marketer do you come in and add a little bit of fuel to the fire without totally blowing it on the credibility?
Um, yeah, I think looking at some of the things, it's just largely amplifying some of the things that have been important to the brand since day one. Again, community people, one-to-one interactions, having events, being able to establish meaningful relationships with people, and that sort of leads to people having an emotional connection with the brand. Very similar to what Red Bull has done in a lot of cases. I think it was just slowly, okay, this is what we did in 2017, and this is what we were able to add in 2018 when I joined. How can we continue to add to some of these things? How can we take storytelling has been important to the brand since day one. So there's stories on our journal that probably go back to like 2015 or 2016. How can, instead of 3 or 4 of these coming out a year, how can we ramp that up to 10 or 12? What's going to help us facilitate telling more stories? And we launched Ciele Athletics Pictures a few years ago to have filmmaking in the mix as well. Our Friends and Fan program, Athletes and Ambassadors, I think all those things, it's just for me been like I said, looking at amplifying or continuing to increase the scale of the way that we're doing things, and also our ability to manage more projects over the course of the year, rather than walking in and saying we need to change everything. This is like, let's forget all these things of the past and start focusing on these things. I think it's great to be able to walk into a place where things are working and there are great connections and great things that have happened, and you're just figuring out how do we continue to add fuel to this fire.
So you just mentioned you're an independent brand, and so immediately my brain goes to, man, yeah, what if somebody did airdrop $50 million on your face? But also, like, Ciele is probably attractive to investors and potential acquirers too. It's probably maybe too sensitive of a question to go deep into, but I'd love to hear how you and the team are thinking about that. Like, having the optionality to take on a lot of capital. You probably do have that opportunity. There's probably people who would love to be involved financially and in ownership. How do you guys think about that stuff?
It's definitely something that does happen. There are people that reach out, I would say on a fairly regular basis, to our founders, and even sometimes through me or other people on the team. Jeremy and Mike have both had, or yeah, they've had businesses that haven't necessarily worked in the past. In particular, Jeremy. Hope he doesn't mind me saying that. But he's had businesses that haven't really worked in the past, and this is the first time that we just celebrated our our 10-year anniversary last year, a decade of CLA athletics. Things are working, and we're continuing to grow, and it's there's a lot of pride there in terms of building something that has had staying power and that people around the world are have a great relationship with. And so when we talk about outside investment internally, there's in a lot of cases outside investment can change the DNA of the brand, and it can put pressure on hitting certain sales objectives at the detriment of maintaining what is important to the brand and has what has made the brand special up until this point. Jeremy also likes to refer to himself as being unemployable. So the idea that he would have to report to someone else is something that doesn't sit well. Um, Theoretically, there could be a situation where maybe there is the right person or right group where that particular situation doesn't exist. But we also really like to think and try to challenge ourselves as to how can we, how can we continue to grow and maintain that independence, um, because of just a concern of having another person or people at the table that are making important decisions that are affecting the vision and values of the brand. Um, as you said, I mean, for sure there are days where we're going through the business planning and looking at what we can do and what we want to do, and the idea of someone airdropping 50 million sounds amazing.
Could really use 50 million right now.
But that always comes at a cost.
Sure, yeah.
And there's definitely days where you look at some other players in the space that do have those injections of cash, and you see what they're able to do with it, and you're like, it'd be nice. But yeah, I think there's a lot of pride in what we've been able to build. And the end goal for Jeremy and Mike is not to get it to a certain point and then sell it and buy yachts and hang out in the Mediterranean. The goal is to just continue to build on CLA, and it takes a long time to build a brand that kind of has a legacy and lasts forever.
The infinite game. We love to see it.
It's like the scratch conversation, isn't it, Aaron?
Yeah, the exact same thing of like, the after the award ceremony, after the podium, then what? What do you do? Like this was the thing. And selling it or moving away
Before
from
you
it
get to your question here, Aaron, I'd love to also just say, I mean, I am becoming more and more enamored with this feeling myself too, with our business. And it's been influenced, especially in conversations that we've had here on Second Nature, but also just as you build a company, you come to love it in a way that is hard to really articulate. And the idea of giving it to somebody else, even if in exchange you get a mountain of cash, is painful to even think about. So the more I think about it, is like, man, I want to have my business forever too, And obviously it's hard to predict what'll happen in the future, but I don't know. In the earliest days, you become attracted to the idea of, oh, I could sell my business for a lot of money. And then once your business is actually valuable, you're like, I never want to sell this thing. Anyway, go ahead, Aaron.
I think one of the big inflection points from the outside was obviously going from mostly headwear to then adding in apparel. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong here. But when you made that switch, or maybe when you came in, were you concerned that, hey, we've got basically one product line here, and what's the plan here? How did adding apparel kind of play into the bigger picture of what you're trying to do?
Yeah, it wasn't a concern of mine going in. Um, and even if we had largely just remained in headwear, I think there's still we're nowhere near what the ceiling is for as with a focus on headwear. And so that wasn't an active concern or anything like that. I don't feel like it was something that was limiting to us, and we also continue to want to innovate and push and um, maintain the position that we have in the headwear space. Um, the the team all has experience in our design team all has experience in apparel design, in footwear design, and there's, a collective 30 years of experience designing technical apparel and footwear, which has actually made our team better at designing headwear. I think it's easy to think that, oh yeah, designing headwear is super easy. It's not. And on top of it not necessarily being that easy to design headwear, it's also challenging to find headwear factories that are open to innovation and open to doing something outside of, here are the 6 blocks that we have. Do you want to embroider your logo or do a heat transfer? So our team has been very fortunate in finding factories that are open to the idea of pushing and innovating. And for a couple of products that we've made, we've actually taken inspiration or design approach construction methods from footwear from other places and applied it to headwear. And for when we launched the Elite, the RD Cap and the Go Cap Elite in 2022, the brim that we used on that, we could not get a headwear factory to make. So we actually worked with a footwear factory to design the brim and then ship those brims to our headwear manufacturer to assemble and come up with the fully finished piece. The idea of doing apparel had always been part of the vision for the brand and company. I want to. There are some products that I think were sampled that were thoughts of what the brand could launch with, and I'm glad. I think one of them was a runnable corduroy short. It's probably best that we launch with headwear and not a runnable corduroy short. But one day we'll make that. We launched our first T-shirt, the Not So Basic Tee, in 2020. And if you doom scroll on our Instagram, there's a CAD drawing of it somewhere in 2016. We talked about the fact that we were working on it. So it's never, I guess it's always been in the back burner, and always been the intent to expand beyond headwear. So apparel definitely brings a lot more complexity to our business, and a lot of the things that we were able to do in headwear just become slightly different when you're working in apparel and sizing and everything like that, and more factories. And but it had always been part of the plan, and we're excited to be able to leverage the team's design experience, knowledge, and just take the things that we've applied to headwear, or take the things that we put into our headwear design and apply that to everything else that we make.
Before we got started, you alluded to the fact that you've just launched 200 new products. I'm assuming most of those are apparel pieces. So maybe you could talk about that specifically, and also any important learnings that the brand has had to internalize as you've expanded into a new category.
Yeah, we just launched our spring collection. So there's 200 plus products. I mean, it's a good mix of headwear and apparel, and in some cases it's entirely new product. In some cases it's headwear or apparel in a new colorway. This is our 6th season with apparel. So we launched sorry, not true. The Not So Basic Tee we launched in 2020. From a technical apparel side, the Not So Basic Tee was wear all day, also wear for a run. Tee was 60% recycled polyester, 40% recycled cotton, and with a cut that, yeah, it's sort of very comfortable to wear all day, but you could also do your 5K at the end of the day or run to the office, run home. But we launched a more expansive technical apparel collection in 2022 with our Elite collection, and then we had what we called Performance Run in 2023, which really then expanded it even further. There's definitely, I mean, there's challenges which we then take learnings from one season, apply it to the next. Obviously, we've already kicked off spring summer 2027 design, so there's a lot of things too that by the time you've actually had the learning, you're already 18 to 24 months away from being able to apply some of it.
Oh,
As a small company, there's a lot of decisions that we just make on gut, on instinct, on what we know, rather than expensive sets of data that we can that we can mine the intel from. And there are certain things that we've also gone on to learn in terms of the distribution channels, our retail partners, what we think is going to work well for them versus what actually ends up working well for them. So I would say the nice thing about Ciele is we do not operate in silos. There's a strong connection between everyone in the team. And so our design team talks to our sales and marketing team, and we look at all of these things together to help make decisions for the future in terms of pieces to add to the collection or pieces to take out of the collection, just different things that we need to adjust to set ourselves up for success. But some of those things do take, I guess there's a level of patience in terms of being able to apply some of those learnings, especially when we're largely making those decisions internally rather than with a wealth of data.
You mentioned that you make some of these decisions with, your gut. I'd love to listen to you talk about the Life Editions collection a little bit, just because looking through that, and side note, those Bluebird pants I think are going to be my new podcast pants. But looking through that, a lot of that stuff is from the website. It almost looks unbranded, and I'd be curious, because you have such a strong brand and a name and everything. Why does it look like, the Life Edition stuff is unbranded? There's got to be a reason, right?
Yeah, I mean, we both from headwear and from apparel, the idea of someone wearing something with a giant logo on a hat, on a tee, and a pair of shorts starts to feel it. I guess we kind of ask ourselves, is that how we would go out into on a run? Like, do we want to look like a cover page of a catalog? And there are certain people that, the large logo or Go Cap Century is a bestseller and has always been a bestseller and will continue to, have that in the offering. But we want to make sure that people are able to, from a personal style and interest standpoint, they'll be able to have pieces with large branding, with more conservative or subtle branding, like the cap that I'm wearing right now. There's just, there's a small logo on the front, logo on the back, to be able to fit that personal fit and style. The LE collection, Life Editions, that is really like a free expression of creativity for our design team. And the mindset going into it was, what pieces do we want to make that we feel are the vision of the design team, without putting restrictive barriers of how commercially viable is this? Is this something that we're going to be able to sell in well to run specialty or sports specialty? So it was really, it was more of like, not a lab necessarily. It's, there are still targets and stuff like that with what we want to do with LE, but we wanted to create a way for our design team to think about what doesn't exist out there in the run industry that could be a really great run piece, but looking at it a little bit more from I guess from a fashion lens, and again, removing some of those barriers so we can create, innovate, evolve, and test things to see if it's just the 29 of us that think that's cool, or if a larger group of people do. I'm stoked to hear that you like the Bluebird EVD pants, and you're gonna have to start filming from 10 feet away so we can get some visibility for
it. I think it's cool. It's like a creative outlet for the brand, which probably opens you up to a lot of potential collaborations, because people see that you're willing to go in that direction that might actually fit them better. Where, we're talking about this idea of how running and lifestyle and fashion are really colliding, especially in this moment when you start putting out this LE stuff and people see like, oh, they're down to get weird. It must open the door for a lot more collaboration intent, right?
That's exactly where I was going to go. Go ahead, Dan.
Go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, we were just talking about the brand momentum. Now we're talking about taking that momentum and getting creative with it. And with the momentum, you become attractive to investors, but at the same time, you also become attractive as a collaboration partner with larger brands. I'm remembering back to when Ciele And Solomon released that co-branded shoe 2 or 3 years ago now. So maybe you could speak about that specifically, or just how you as a brand are thinking about collaboration opportunities and what benefit it brings to CLA.
Yeah, collaborations are obviously something that have long been important and continue to have a lot of importance. They're amazing, or can be amazing, for creating energy, and just, they draw a lot of attention. And it's a good opportunity for, one brand to bring their approach to do something with another brand, and find that, like, the intersection on the Venn diagram of what's important to those two brands. Um, they can also end up being quite a fair bit of work, especially when you're doing a collaboration with a much larger brand. The levels of complexity, the things that need to happen on the back end for the end product to actually come out and be available is at times it was maybe more taxing for the size of company that we were at. Um, but I think it's um, there are a lot of brands that have knocked on our doors, and hopefully will continue to knock on our doors, that want to work on things together. We've always kind of viewed it as, all right, the ideal situation is one where there isn't a huge time constraint. It's not like we're rushing to get something done, and we're finding ways of how can we actually sit at a design table together, um, find a storyline, collaborate on the design that's going to help kind of bring that to life, and um, take the time to do it right, and elevate it in a way that it's not just, here's our logo, send me your logo, and we'll put something out there that's a collaboration. um, that makes it more challenging, and I think there's a lot of probably good opportunities for the brand that we have turned down, or said, let's take more time with this, because we don't want to just do those quick sprints, and we want to find ways that we can really put a product out that we're like, this is meaningful, this story is meaningful, and the way that we've approached this collaboration from a design standpoint is really meaningful.
I'd love to go a layer deeper on this collaborations thing, in the sort of like the nuts and bolts of like what, when does it make sense to actually do this, and why would you potentially approach a brand, or what would be the green light, red light of why you would move forward with this? Obviously, this ability to reach new people, test out some new thing, but you've got right now 6 different capsules on your site. I'm sure you've done many more in the past, but like, what's the right cadence? What's the consideration that is happening internally if a brand comes to you and says we should work together?
Um, yeah, I think the for each one of those projects, it's good to establish what the definition of success is. And if we look at the collaborations that we've done in the past, what we call joint adventures, we generally put those into 3 different buckets. There were collaborations with endemic run brands, so us as a run brand working with another core run brand. Example being Tracksmith. We've had plenty of joint adventures with Tracksmith, um, Run Amok, etc. Like there's 2 run brands coming together to do something. There you can really focus on what is a great running moment or running story that we can do something together, and again merge our approach with their approach. Then there were sort of larger sports brand collaborations that there's a run story in what they're doing, but run isn't the only thing that they're focused on. An example being Reigning Champ. We've done a few joint adventures with them. And the sort of the definition of success with a brand like that might be it's an opportunity for them to have a great run story that reinforces what they're doing in that space, knowing that it's not the only thing that they're focusing on. And for us, it could be, well, they're a larger brand, their distribution is wider, and it's an opportunity for us to get exposure to this great audience that they've cultivated over the years. And then the other one would be sort of really focused on community and less commercial goals. Really, just like what is a great partner that we can do something special with in the community space. An example would be we did a joint adventure hat with Parkdale Roadrunners for their 5th year anniversary, their 10-year anniversary, the Berlin Braves a few years ago. And those were just like, let's just do something really fun and cool together, and like focus on the story, focus on it being around a key moment for that community partner, which I think has generally led to great outcome, great product. But again, you wouldn't want to try to attach a huge sales target to something like that, or let's make sure that this helps us grow our audience by 10%. Like it's just, you need to kind of really define what is success for each one of those different approaches to make sure that you're making the right decisions and setting that project up for the right approach to do good things for the brand.
The joint adventure. I love that as a concept. It reminds me, Aaron and I recorded a couple of days ago with some folks at Arc'teryx who are just down the road from you in Vancouver. Of course, Dan, as we said at the top, is in Squamish, but Ciele, the brand, started in Montreal, which makes me want to ask the same question I asked the Arc'teryx people about the significance of place. Like, maybe I don't even know what the name, where that comes from, if that's like a French Canadian thing, but also like it seems like the brand is proudly from Montreal. And like, I think you mentioned that the retail outlet or the flagship store is in Montreal. So what about Montreal has bled into the brand, and what about the brand, signals pride in the place it was born?
Yeah, I mean Montreal's definitely something that's important to us. I think the obviously just from like where people lived at the time of the brand starting, but there we have tried to, I guess, find ways to infuse things that are important to Montreal into what we've been doing over the course of the past 10 years plus. We always want to make sure that we're trying to really be as connected as possible with the Montreal run scene and larger Montreal scene. The yeah. What's been important? What's important for Montreal is being able to have options to help you run year round. And you're going to fluctuate in Montreal from plus 35, 100% humidity sometimes in the summer to minus 35, minus 40, just absolutely frigid winters. And that's helped, I guess, our design team look at how we can have a year-round offering, and how do we make sure that it informs a lot of things that we're doing on the design side to make sure that we are creating product for every single type of weather, climate, situation. I think that's just helped shape how we've expanded the collection. In terms of like, I guess, in terms of being able to tell a Montreal story on a global scale, that's something that we need to keep challenging ourselves to do. And we really do want to focus with Espace is the name of our flagship store in Montreal. And it's not just a flagship store. We really want it to be able to stand on its own as a run store. So yes, obviously carries the vast majority of our collection, but we also carry third-party brands in the store. There's probably 6 or 7 footwear brands that we carry. We carry some sunglass brands, nutrition brands, accessories, trekking poles, gloves, packs, things that we don't make. We carry them in store as well because we want people to be able to come there and essentially get fully equipped for a run. We're not trying to compete with other run retailers in Montreal in the sense that we want to have 200 shoes on the footwall. We want to have on the footwear wall. We want to have what we feel are like really great individual pieces. And then if someone comes in and is like, "Oh man, I love, I see that you have the Saucony Pro Elites. Do you also have these?" If we don't have it, the goal is that we're picking up the phone, we're calling other stores in Montreal and seeing if they have it, and being able to help that customer say, okay, you're looking for this exact shoe. Go see Boutique Couture, Boutique Endurance, and they have it for you. We have a community space as well. So the side of the store, we have bag drop, water refill station. We can host. We have 3-4 run clubs that are using this space on a weekly basis. We can host events, and we can host different things to really be able to help provide a platform for anyone in the community that wants to do something. If they want to host a podcast recording, if they want to host, if they want to do an art show, art gallery, photo exhibit, a panel discussion. We're really opening up our doors to be able to be a space that the Montreal run community can use for whatever's going to help their particular events, projects, and objectives.
I know Dylan sort of snuck this into that last question, but what is the story behind the name of the brand?
So the full story, the brand was originally called Miles. Um, and obviously distance, go on for miles, running for miles. And there was a production on the water of the first cap in 4 colorways that was heading across the ocean to Montreal. And there's a preliminary trademark name search that was done, and nothing came up that was going to be problematic. As that boat was on the water, another more extensive trademark search was done. And I guess the legal help at the time said, okay, I just want to flag something that did come up. There is a registration for the name Miles in the sports in sort of the sports area. It's not specific to running hat, and so it's not, or running headwear apparel, but it is in sports, in team sports, and so there is a possibility that the person who owns that trademark may feel like there's an issue and could potentially take you to court for that. The person who the company that had that is the Denver Broncos, whose mascot is called Miles, and so
that's my club, unfortunately, Dan. I'm sorry to.
Way to go!
It's okay.
No,
It's
maybe
okay.
it's a blessing, though. Maybe it's a blessing.
So that again, that lawyer, trademark, trademark counsel said, based on this, like you have a really great claim. If you were ever to go to court with them, like you should win. To which Jeremy and Mike, who were largely broke when they started the company, kind of heard that and laughed and said, even if we were able to win it, day one in court against the Denver Broncos, like we're done. We're bankrupt. We can't afford to do that. So there became this very quick, pressing need to come up with a new name for the company. And obviously, there's a level of frustration with choosing a name that someone else also was working with. So Jeremy very quickly went through the process of like, what's a new name for the company? Ciele, Ciel, so not with the E at the end, does mean sky in French. And there's this notion of like up, headwear, going up, sky's the limit. There's a lot of, positive thoughts around the sky. So, but really the idea, what aesthetically from a design standpoint, the 5 letters as a logo, as a word mark, really like Jeremy was really into it. So adding an E at the end made it a word that does not exist. It could, be proprietary. You could avoid a situation like this where there's someone else who has it registered in another category. And so they landed on Ciele, and that's another production was soon put into the works, and a new order was shipped across the ocean, and we launched as Ciele.
Wait, what happened to the original ones that say Miles? Are they like buried in the back of your warehouse, or?
We still, I'm not sure 100% how many we have. We've never thrown anything out. So we still have them. I think we've gifted them in certain situations. And when the first year that we did a pop-up in Montreal, we had a few of those on display and sort of we're telling people the story. So we still have them.
That's cool.
I gotta say, Ciele is a better name than Miles. Which makes me want to ask, maybe we can kind of close on this unless Lucy's got anything else before BPC, but just like the importance of brand too, because Ciele is one of those brands where you can like even if you took the logo off of the product, you would know who it comes from. And if I go to the LE collection, for example, like, yeah, you can tell it's a Ciele product, even though a lot of that stuff is unbranded. So it's part vibe, part design language, And then, of course, there's the important elements of logos and names, etc. Anything you want to share about how you guys think about brand and showing up consistently?
It's something that's important to all of us as individuals and as a company. I think we're all brand people. Maybe different brands inspire us and different, if you were to put presentations together of like the brands that we think have done an amazing job, we'd all have different brands in there, but it's something that is just incredibly important to us. And we say internally, we say baby steps all the time. I think there are some non-baby steps that we could have taken to accelerate growth, to hit specific sales targets, etc. But generally speaking, all of those would have come at the cost of what is important to the brand. And if you start to um, ignore your values, ignore things that you hold near and dear, then you're sort of eroding what is the foundation that you're trying to build on top of. So fortunately, I mean that does mean that certain things just take longer, and we're comfortable with the idea of baby steps and the idea that small things are going to take us longer, but doing that in a way that is setting us up for really, really long-term success. And we say, Jeremy says often, it takes 20 years to build a brand. So we're halfway there. If we start to make decisions for the wrong reasons, we may not get there. We may not sort of create this brand and legacy that we really want to maintain. We want to be here in another 10 years. We want to be here in 20 years. We want to be here in 50 years. And we want Ciele to really stand for the same things that it stood for when it started. And so brand is above all in pretty much every decision that we make.
Very cool. Well, as we track towards BPC, I guess where I want to kind of close on to what you've done with the brand and marketing and the product itself, it's really kind of broken a lot of ground in this specific space. I'd love to know from you, because you're relatively new to running, as in like the last 10 years, right? Where are the other places that you're sort of drawing inspiration, maybe outside of running, that might be playing into the brand? Are there different industries or other brands kind of outside of the running space that really kind of inspire you?
Um, yeah, for sure. I mean, I think both myself and a lot of us in the office, we have strong connections to action sports. So, looking at what's happening in skateboarding, snowboarding, we draw inspiration from what's happening there. I think the outdoor industry is super interesting, and as we look at technical performance products for running, there's a lot to learn, there's a lot to pay attention to in terms of what's happening in the outdoor space. Um, and then on the fashion side of things, I think there's a lot to look at, both from a design standpoint, but also just from a premium positioning, and how do you create product that stands out? How do you make things just look exceptional at retail partners, et cetera? Like the fashion space does that really well. So there's probably a lot more. I mean, I think everything that we encounter on a daily basis, there's something to pull from, and even though it's completely disconnected from running, there's a way that you can find correlations, and it can help inform decisions that you make that come back to what Ciele is working on and working towards.
Brad.
That was a pretty broad answer. That was, everything. The answer is everything.
Everything is inspiring. The world is your oyster. It is a blank canvas, and we've got millions of brushes. Cool. All right. Well, Dan, we close all these conversations with brand, product, content. We loosely filled you in on this before we pressed record. You're our guest, so you get to go first. Choose from any of those categories. Share something that's inspiring you.
Cool. I'm gonna go with product. And obviously, I would love to go off on every single Ciele product. I won't do that today. I'll remove the bias of wanting to obviously focus on the things that we're making. But a product that I've been exceptionally impressed by recently is the Raid. What's it called? The 2F, 2L, 2FL. Damn it. Hip belt. So I'm not a like long trail runs, generally speaking, I'm trying to go with nothing on me. Sometimes obviously a hydration pack. And one of my coworkers, Scott, the last time we were at a spa, so we actually carry it at our store. There we go. I found a way to sneak Ciele into it. So we had a sales meeting, we're hanging out in the store, and the Raid bag is there, and Scott looks at me and is like, you should pick that up.
Yeah.
It's an exceptional product. And the way that it fits everything into it, you can fit trekking poles, you can attach trekking poles to it, but it feels like it's not there. I've put it to use on a couple of trail runs, and I really look forward to going for much longer runs where I have that as opposed to lugging around a hydration pack. And it's just really exceptionally made. I've been impressed with its not just I guess its carrying capacity, but just the level of comfort in terms of actually going out for a run and it not feeling like it's slowing you down, holding you back, or adding unnecessary weight. Have you
Big
ran with that, Dylan? Are you familiar?
I have, yes. Kyle Siegel is a previous guest on the podcast. In fact, his episode is still probably our most popular episode ever. He was one of our original guests. I feel
We are
like Second Nature almost put him on the map a little bit.
big fans of Raid for sure. Yeah. Yeah, we did that interview when he was in Asia doing the final production run on that actual belt. So fun to watch his entire journey, and also fun trying to organize timing to do that interview way back in the day. Dylan, what you got?
Okay, I'll go next. I got a weird one today, boys. You know, typically we're focused on outdoor. I'm usually the guy who brings product and brand. Lutzie's usually the guy that brings content. I'm bringing geopolitical content here, guys. Are you familiar with Nick Denton? He was the founder of Gawker Media, the digital publishing platform that Peter Thiel put out of business in that Hulk Hogan lawsuit. Are you guys familiar with this whole story?
I read that book. It is gnarly.
Yes.
It's actually
Ryan
a Ryan
Holiday
Holiday.
book. Yeah,
Yep.
I read that book too. What's it called again? Conspiracy? I think that's right.
That. Yeah.
Anyway, after Peter Thiel put Gawker Media out of business, Nick Denton basically went into hiding. He went dark on social media and basically disappeared from public life. He has reemerged recently. He's reactivated his Twitter account and he's being extraordinarily active. And because of that, he has been asked to be a guest on a couple of podcasts. And oh my God, have I been binging his content and so fascinated by it. So really quickly, number one, he's a very intelligent person. And you can tell he brings like a journalist's mind to the way he's thinking about the world. I didn't know this. Gawker was known as, you know, sort of like a gossip rag, like sort of an online tabloid, not necessarily something you associate with like highly credible, intelligent discourse. In fact, that's why they got put out of business, because they published some extremely not safe for work content. Anyway, turns out he is very well versed in financial reporting, politics reporting, and effectively the reason he's kind of come out publicly again and started to make his opinions known on social media is because he believes that this is sort of like the most important moment in history, at least during his lifetime. And he views it as like this massive shift in geopolitical power, effectively the downfall of the United States of America and the ascendance of China. And I got to say, he's got a very compelling argument. And he's starting a new business whose name I can't recall right now. But the way I'm interpreting it, and I may be wrong about this, is that it will be some sort of a media publishing platform, which is, of course, his expertise. But also it will have some sort of investing, like effectively they're going to be making financial bets based on their reporting, as far as I can understand it. So for example, he's short Tesla and Apple and long BYD and Xiaomi, I think is the phone manufacturer in China. Anyway, it's very, very interesting. And I've been not paying attention to politics whatsoever. This is like not, you know, down traditional political reporting. It's more like a view into where we are now in the arc of history. And I find it both terrifying and fascinating. So, Nick Denton, especially, I want to recommend his appearance on the Semaphore Media podcast called Mixed Signals. Very, very interesting stuff. Anyway, I've been listening to like an episode every day with him, and I find him to be a very compelling character.
Wow. All right. I'll add it to the list.
Weird one
Seems a
for
good
me.
one.
Yeah.
Well, we added another book recommendation to the podcast, so our book list continues to grow. Always a positive. Okay, I'll bring it home. I'm sticking with my lane, content. And I think actually today's submission is sort of related to sort of the story of Ciele. It's actually, there's a creator by the name of Dustin Klein, another Portland bike creator, incredible content creator. He's also the guy who started Cadence, which was a clothing company in the cycling world, which was eventually acquired. So he's like this artist, cyclist, business person who kind of, fell into it. And he put out a video this week called "If I Didn't Do This, I'd Still Be Stuck in a Life I Hated." And it really is sort of his journey of like, I had a full-time job. I had this North Star of where I wanted to go, and I realized that I wasn't tracking towards it. And I realigned everything. I quit my job. I started working in a cafe, and I started doing these little things to try to experiment. And then all of a sudden, something caught fire. And guess what? It was the combination of the handful of things I've been working on to get there. And he kind of lays out this structure for, hey, if you're in this situation and you want to be doing something more meaningful and creating and building and whatever, this is sort of my playbook for it, and he's kind of sharing it out. So I don't know, I found it really inspiring to watch. He's put out some incredible content, but this one, you kind of get a peek behind the curtain of how he's gotten to where he is from both Cadence as well as building up his YouTube channel. Everything's been done. So I will link that in the show notes for everyone to check out and get inspired.
Awesome. 3 great ones. Dan, thank you so much for coming on the podcast, man. And congratulations on everything that Ciele has done recently. I will look forward to seeing a lot more of you guys in the future.
Sweet. Appreciate that. And thanks. Yeah, thanks for having me on.